Hello, everyone. Thank you for being patient with us as we work on some technical issues. This is Tiffany Kinney speaking, and I'm with the Home-Based Professional Learning team. Today, you are going to be learning about reporting and dropouts in PowerSchool. I'm going to make sure that you can hear me and see my screen before we do our introductions and get started. So if you can hear me clearly, if you would please raise your hand. If you can hear me clearly, please raise your hand. All right, I see a few hands going up. So if you can hear me, okay, wonderful. All right, I'm going to put your hands down right now. And everybody is on mute right now. So let's also check to make sure you can see my screen. So if you can put your hand up if you see my screen as well. All right, I'm seeing hands go up. That's great. Awesome. We are recording this webinar, so we will post this on our NCSys site, and I'll make sure you know how to get there as well. But today we're going to talk about reporting dropouts in PowerSchool. In the room, I have Dr. Ken Gaddis back with us, and also Jennifer Watson, and they are with the Center for Safer Schools.
Very good.
And they're going to be presenting, Ken's going to be presenting today. If you have any questions, you should have a little questions area in your GoToWebinar. You can send those in, and we'll pause throughout or at the end and answer those questions. Also, in the handout section, I'm going to go ahead and put this PowerPoint presentation right now. So if you'll give me 1 minute, and I will upload that. So if you want to follow along. So it should be uploading right now into the handout. And then also your chat, if you need to chat with others while you're here, you can also enter chat through there. All right, so let's go ahead and get started if we have no questions. 1 minute, start from beginning. All right, take it away,
All right.
Ken.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Ken Gaddis back for another go at the dropout data collection, and have Jennifer Watson here with me. Jennifer is going to be working with me in this area and in other types of data reporting responsibilities. It's October, so it's time to think about dropout reporting, and I think we've gotten a little bit of a late start getting in touch with everybody about this, but hopefully we'll be able to take care of this very important dropout collection without too much trouble. We have had an extension already because of the hurricane. 10 days. We're now set to go with a due date of Friday, November 2nd. Let me say to all the districts that were affected in the extreme by the hurricane, I'll have to work with some of you about possibly some additional time. Let's say, just as a general rule, if you've missed more than 10 days of school, you know, you can touch base with me and let me know your progress, and let me know whether you think you're going to be able to meet this Friday, November 2nd deadline. If you didn't miss more than 10 days of school, I expect everybody to happily comply with Friday, November 2nd. So that's 2 weeks later than what we had in the dropout manual. So the dropout manual, of course, is posted online, and it has all the rules and regulations about what is a dropout and all the exceptions. And we're not going to get into a lot of the details about what is a dropout. I will take questions about anything about dropout reporting today, but today's presentation is mostly about how we actually do the dropout data collection. So let's take a look at our topics that we're going to cover today. And so we're going to first off research who is potentially a dropout. We have some reports that we'll be looking at. We're going to talk about the importance of the underlying enrollment records that generate these reports, the no-show records and the W-2 records. We're going to look at how we designate a potential dropout as an actual dropout. We call that a verified dropout. We'll look at that process. We'll look at the state reporting process. And then finally, we'll look at the exception about reporting adult high school students that go to community college programs as a W-2T and get them an exemption from being reported as a dropout. So to start off with, our two reports for researching potential dropouts. Our potential dropout match report displays students with W-2 records from 2017-18 and the current school in which they enrolled, if any. So these are students that went out last year with a W-2. They dropped out, they disappeared, so they had to be listed as a W-2. Then we have another category of dropouts. These are students that completed last year. So the completers that failed to return report will display students that completed the school year and are no-shows for this year. Okay, so we're going to start with the potential dropout match report, but both of these reports are found the same way. How do we find them? We go to the dashboard under state reports, and this is a screenshot of the top of the page. And then let's take a look at the procedure for finding these reports, these state reports. So in Power School, under Reports, select State Reports. That puts you on that Dashboards tab that you just saw. Locate and run the Dropout Data Collection Report. You need to click Refresh as needed to complete the report, then click Review, and then look for these two reports, Potential Dropout Match and Completers that fail to return, in the drop-down box under Data Views. So let's take a look at some screenshots now that show this. We're back to the dashboards page. This is the top of the page. I believe our next one is the bottom of the page. Scrolling on down towards the bottom, we have the dropout data collection. So over on the right, you see you have the Run button. Click the Run button. And then next to the dropout data collection, you're going to see a little wheel that turns around, and that indicates that the report is running. And then you'll need to click refresh at the top right until the report finishes. You may need to click it more than once, or you can kind of set a certain time for it to auto refresh. Basically, we have to let the report finish running and the wheel's got to stop. And when it does, we know that the report has finished running, and then we click the review button, and then we'll see what's in the report. And the report is going to give you some, you'll see the data views, and then you'll select the particular data view. There's going to be about 5 of these under the dropout report. Some of the data views are views of what your data is going to be when you actually start reporting dropouts. At this point, those will probably be empty. They probably won't have, for example, the verified dropout report. Some of those won't have any data at all, but hopefully these potential, these two reports we're going to talk about, potential dropout match and completers, will be full of data right now, and you can see them, you display them, and we'll talk about how to use them. So you see there's the results in this particular example here, and you can see a bunch of students listed. And this is remember, this is the students that had a W-2 last year, so you can see all those exit codes of W-2. And so they don't have a dropout reason right now because that hasn't been entered in for them. And they don't have a verified because that's what you would do to say the student really is a dropout. These are just potential dropouts. So all these students are potentially dropout except for the students that match. And if they match, what that means is that they have returned to a school somewhere. They dropped out last year, but the state system has found them enrolled in a school this year. The only thing that we need to make sure of is that they are in school at a reasonable time. As you see under the match entry date column, a couple of students that were enrolled back again on 8/25, and assuming that's a regular school with a regular school year, that's going to be probably close to the first day of school, and that's in plenty of time. The rule is the student has to be enrolled by the 20th day in order to not count as a dropout. So if the student's back in school by the 20th day or on day 20, and they're enrolled on day 20, they would not be a dropout. So this report allows you to eliminate some of these students as potential dropouts. So you can just take the report and like put a big mark through it and say this student's not a dropout. So that's how you use that. Then there's a couple of other things you do after that, and I think we have that on the next slide. So the first bullet we just talked about, we're going to remove any students from dropout status if they have a matched school entry-exit date that indicates they were in school on the 20th day. And then finally, you take a look at your exceptions. So we can review this real quickly. We have exceptions for students that have left the country. So let's say we may have a student that's on this report. They dropped out last year, but you have a note that was taken from information from a responsible adult that knew the family and that could testify that those students, that family has left and gone to Mexico or to Canada or some other country that we can't track them in, and that's an exception to dropout reporting. We don't have to make sure they're in school in another country. We can also remove any students that are currently serving a long-term suspension. In other words, they cannot be enrolled on the 20th day because they are long-term suspended. Students that are enrolled in a school in another state is an exception, but you have to verify this. You either need to get a request for records from the school in the other state, or you need to contact somebody in that school district and get a assurance that that student is enrolled in school and make a note of that. Another exception is being enrolled in a private school or a home school, and you can get that information from the North Carolina Department of Non-Public Education, NCDPE, NPE, Non-Public Education. So that you can find that online, and there's also a link in the dropout manual to this. So this would be your homeschool students and your private school students. Finally, you can remove any students that meet the conditions of the initial enrollee exception, and this is the exception for students that appear in your district for the very first time and that then leave within 20 days, and you don't have to report those students as a dropout. Okay, so that's the first report. That's your dropout match. That's for all the students that dropped out last year in your district should show up on this report, assuming that they had the W-2 correctly placed on their record last year. Now, other reports, completers that failed to return, this is going to find the students that if you coded them correctly as a no-show, that should show up as students that completed last year and that failed to return. So you can see under the data views that we clicked and we found this report. This particular report in the example doesn't have any data in it, but you can see some of the column headings: student number, student name, grade, exit date, exit code, dropout reason, and verified. So this report should remove any students that returned to another school in the state, because it can mine the database of all the students in the state, and it's only going to show the students that you coded as a no-show after not returning. Remember, the students that finish the year are going to have a tentative E1 code, an enroll code, for their expected return to school in the fall. So the way that we ask people to do a no-show record is to take the E1 record, which is going to be the first day of school for this school year, and add a W1 code on it, and that creates a no-show record, and that's what will flag that student and put them on this report. Okay, so we'll talk about how some of the issues may be with coding in just a second, but for right now, let's see one other slide about this completers report. What do we do with it? Well, we remove any student that's on this list. Again, these are potential dropouts that are completers that fail to return, but we also can review for exceptions for these students, and it's the same 5 exceptions that we had before. Okay, so let's talk about no-show records. This has been a little bit a contentious issue because it's been a little bit awkward for people to use the W-1 code in a different way. Normally a W-1 on a record means the student has transferred to another school. But a couple of years ago, the process was created to create a no-show record that will be recognized by these reports, and to do it in a uniform way would be to place a W-1 on that E-1, that first day of enrollment. And so that E-1 is going to be there, and that's a simple way just to note that the student dropped out during the summer and did not show up this year. And then if that's done correctly, then the completers that fail to report will mine all these no-shows and put it on the report. And then also W-2 records can be issues too, but not if they're done correctly. I mean, most people are going to do this correctly, but when we first started doing it, I think there was some confusion. So we actually came up with a little process to check to make sure that our W-2 records have been put in the correct place. And we want these W-2 records to be, these are last year's dropouts, so we want them on a 2017-18 enrollment record. And one error would be to put the W-2 on the 2018-19 record, kind of like a no-show. But if you do that, then the W-2 will not be pulled as part of the potential dropout match report as it's intended to be. But there is a way to correct it. If you have, you can check and see whether or not you have some W-2s on this year's enrollment records by doing a little search. And we have some screenshots to show you how to do a few steps. I'm not going to take a lot of time with this because this would be like assuming that people are, have done this incorrectly. And I think by this time, this is probably done correctly. So, but basically, this is just using a search process that looks for any students that have a W-2 exit code and that have had an entry date, basically this has been done this fiscal year in the 2018-19 year. So you see entry date greater than 7/1/2018 and exit date less than 10/15 or some other date, just to find all the students this year that have W-2s. So it's just a process to go through. Let's just skip through. There's actually a number of screens you can review, and you can call me with any questions that you have about this. It's using something called a direct database export to find these records and to view them. Okay, so and then this was in this example, then this shows that it found some W-2 students that were at that time when this was done was the 2014-15 school year. Okay, now let's talk about designating verified dropouts. This is after you've used your candidate reports and determined who are the students that you're going to have to report as dropouts. One thing we haven't talked about is actually trying to hunt down these students. And of course, we know that everybody's out there that works in the dropout area is very diligent about trying to find all these students. And one way to avoid having the students as a dropout is to find them and get them back in school. And we know that you guys all do that very well, but we know that sometimes we just can't get them back in school, or they're gone somewhere and we have to report them. So how do we designate them? These students are going to all be inactive now since they're dropouts. So when we know who the students are and we have a list, we go and we find them and we search for them with the prefix with a slash to indicate the inactive students. And then on the menu bar under enrollment, click on transfer information, and that's going to give us the transfer information page. What we're going to do is we're looking for enrollment records now. For the students already coded W-2, the ones that dropped out last year, you're going to select the current enrollment record because that's going to be the last enrollment record they have, and that way you'll find the most recent enrollment record. For the completers that failed to return this year, you're going to select the most recent previous enrollment record. The reason that's a previous enrollment record Because remember, if they fail to return this year, they're going to have an E1 enrollment record for their expected return to school this year. That's going to be the most, that no-show record is going to be the most, the current enrollment record. So you're going to go look for the previous enrollment record. That will give you the 2017-18 record. So you want to find that record that we want to use to designate, basically it's a 2017-18 record that we need to designate the verified dropout. Okay, so we click on the entry date for the student's current enrollment. That's going to click us to the edit current enrollment page, and this is going to be now for the W-2s. With one caveat: if the student has returned to school this year after the 20th day and must be reported as a dropout, and that could have happened. Some of you have already had your 20th day this year now. So if they still have to be reported as a dropout, even though they were a W-2 last year, in this very rare case, that enrollment record will be a previous enrollment instead, because remember, they're going to be back in school this year and we'll have a current enrollment. But in most cases, it's going to be the edit current enrollment page that you'll be looking at. Basically, you find the dropout box, the verified dropout box, you check it. You find the appropriate dropout reason from the drop-down box. You make sure all the required fields have data, and you click Submit. And let's take a look at the screenshot for that. So here's the, this would be the edit current enrollment page. And down at the very bottom, you can see the checkbox for verified dropout and the drop-down box for dropout reason. Okay, so the others, the completers that failed to return, similar. We're going to try to find those records. We're going to look for the student's most previous enrollment, and that will display the page Edit Previous Enrollment. Click the Verified Dropout box. Again, select appropriate dropout reason. Again, make sure all required fields have data, and click Submit. Okay, and we did not have a screenshot of that one. That screen is going to look very similar to what the other screen looked like. Now, to submit the verified dropouts, after all verified dropouts have been added, we want to run the dropout data collection report. So we've already run that report before in order to get these reports. You can run this report anytime and it just updates everything. So if we want to make sure that these dropouts that we have clicked are now counted as verified dropouts, we must run the dropout data collection report. And then we run it like we did before, we click Review, and now in the data views, we're going to select Final Dropout Verification, and we're going to look for those students that we have checked, make sure they're there. So that's what number 4 is, check verified dropouts, not add the checkbox. This means actually visually check the verified dropouts. Check the exceptions. All these reports have exceptions, so we want to look and make sure there were no errors. And then on the state reports current collections page, next to dropout at the far right, click Approve. But let me just say, don't do this all in one step. You want to click the Approve when you're finally ready at the very end of this. So you may do this several times before you're ready to approve. One reason why you may not want to approve right away is that we need to get a lot of these dropouts submitted throughout the state. Statewide, I will run a duplicates report. And this would give us one last chance to catch students that we shouldn't have any duplicates to begin with, but sometimes things happen and more than one school in a district or more than one district will report the same student as a dropout. So don't approve your data right away, wait a little while, and after other schools have submitted data towards the end of the collection period, you can do your approval. in the meantime, I'll be checking, and I'll let anybody know if you have a duplicate dropout, and try to help you figure out which one can be removed from dropout reporting. Okay, do we have any questions at this time?
We do have
a
question on one question that came through. Just to clarify, for a completer that fails to return, that we are verifying, oh, it moved up on it. Sorry. Oh, let me try that again. That we are verifying as a dropout, you do not mark it on the no-show enrollment record under current enrollment, but you do verify it on the previous year enrollment record for the 17-18, even though they successfully completed the school year in 17-18.
That is correct, and that's a very good question. It can be confusing because they did complete that school year, especially confusing, let's say, if this was an 8th grader that drops out at the end of the 8th grade year and fails to show up at high school, then you would think, well, gosh, they completed middle school, but you're going to put that no-show, that verified dropout record on the 8th grade school year, and that's going to be a dropout for that middle school, and which may be counterintuitive for some people, but that's the way that the dropout report works. The dropout goes back to the last school attended, and if you handle it that way and you mark it on last year's enrollment record, it will make it a 2017-18 dropout at the correct school.
On my completers that failed to return, I have 10 students listed and all have the exit date of 5/31/18. That's the day after the last day. But you said entry and exit dates should be first day of school. Is it okay to go back in now after EOY to change those dates?
That might be a Tiffany question.
Yeah, I may have to double check with our SIS manager on that to see. But is it true that it needs to be the first day of school? Is that correct?
In order to get the report to work, that brings up a good question, though. It's like there's two things at issue here. One is getting nice, correct, and neat reports that we can find potential dropouts from. The other is reporting the correct dropouts. So the only thing that's really important here is reporting the correct dropouts. No matter how we determine them, these reports are only a means to an end to get there. So you can use your own judgment about that. You may not want to, if you have another way to find the students that correctly need to be reported a dropout, you don't have to go to all kinds of efforts to get these reports to work correctly if you know exactly who students you're trying to get anyway. We're not going to be making these candidate reports, these two candidate reports we talked about. They're not going to be official in any way. They're only to help you in this collection. So you have some choices that you can make. If you have another way to determine who are the correct dropouts to report, then you won't need to make sure that the report runs correctly.
And what is the reason code used for a student who enrolls in Job Corps?
Job Corps. Well, I might need to go. We do have other, and I don't think we have a Job Corps. And make sure that Job Corps still only has. I think that they have been making some improvements in Job Corps, and there may be some programs now that give a high school diploma, a real high school diploma. But in the past, they've been mostly GED, so it's correct. If it is just a GED program at Job Corps, they will have to be reported as a dropout. But I don't think we have a code other than other that would work for that.
All right. Is this report done K-12?
Yes, that's a good question because it's actually 112. We do not report kindergartners, but we don't have exceptions for young students, and so young students are reported. They go into our total of dropouts for the year. They follow the same rules as other students. But let's just put it this way, that those dropouts that are reported at younger ages are not very high-profile data. They do go in some data tables in the report, but whenever you're reporting a dropout rate, most people are going to be attuned to your high school dropout rate for your district and your individual high school's dropouts. So it is something that we report for completeness. If you can't find a student and you can't determine that the student's enrolled in school, they are supposed to be reported as dropouts.
If I have completers that failed to return that I know went to other schools out of state exceptions, do I need to do anything?
You just need to document how you know that that they went to schools out of state.
Okay. We do have some questions coming in. We have a student who graduated last year, but is a returning student because she is an EC student. She attended the first 10 days, but then decided not to return. What withdrawal code would she receive?
Okay,
she
attended
attended the first 10 days, and then decided not to return.
What was her status last year?
We had a student who graduated last year.
Who graduated last year?
But is returning student because she's an EC student. A little different situation. We may have to research that one.
Yeah, I'm not even familiar with students that graduate and
then they
return, so we'll have to look at that one.
Okay.
Okay, you want to?
Yeah, let's keep going, and then we have a couple more questions.
Okay, we'll come back at the end. We're almost at the end of the slides.
Exactly. All right.
Okay, so this is the slide that we're looking at is the final dropout verification report. This is after we've submitted the verified dropouts and run the report again. And this would be like, this is going to be a fairly lengthy report for many districts. So this will be on multiple pages. You see down at the bottom it says page 1 of 1 there. This is going to be all your students listed. You'll see yes for the verified status there on the right. You'll see hopefully a dropout reason underneath it. This one of our accepted dropout reasons. And so this is just a way for you to check to see whether or not you've got everybody that you thought you had submitted. It's your all your verified dropouts. Now, there's also other reports I'll just mention. I don't think we have any screenshots of them here right now. But once you have your verified dropout report, there's also a couple of reports that give you totals. And one of them is by all your students by race and gender. That's going to give you all your totals for all your schools, including middle schools or elementary schools and any school that you have. And then you're going to have one called your count and rates report, and that's going to give you your official high school dropout rates for all your high schools and for the district. So those are key reports that will give you that information. Of course, you know that'll be what you'll be looking at towards the end of the process. Okay, so now let's talk about the, I think it's 3 years old now, where we give exceptions for reporting adult high school students. So a student that leaves the public schools and goes to community college into an adult high school program, and these are special programs that only exist, I think they exist at most of the community colleges, but not all of them. And these programs are an agreement between the superintendent of your school system and the community college president that you would have this adult, so it's a cooperative arrangement to yield a high school diploma program at the community college. So now these adult high school students, we still need to report them as dropouts. So they're going to be reported as dropouts just like everybody else, but we're going to give them a special status if we agree to track these students and make sure we keep up with them. We can get an exception from for the students in the current reporting year. So the second bullet reads, the W2T designation, that's what they're going to get in Power School, means that the dropout rates the dropout does not count for the official school LEA dropout counts or rates. W2Ts will appear on the reports as W2s with dropout reason code CCAHS. So that's just important for you to be aware of, is that when you're looking for these students on your final reports, the T does not appear on that report, unfortunately. However, you can find those by scanning down and look for that reason code. So if it has reason code CCAHS, then you have successfully put that student on there, and then they will not show up as officially verified dropouts. They'll be on the list of verified dropouts, but they will not show up in your totals. And that's what the third bullet says. Dropout calculation and summary by race ethnicity reports will not include dropouts with these W2T designations, the students with the reason code CCAHS. Then students must be reported as regular dropouts if they do not maintain continuous enrollment in the AHS. So there's a process that we have in PowerSchool now. If you get the exception one year and then the student does not maintain continuous enrollment, you're going to have to re-enroll them and make them a W2 for the year after that. So you maybe have to do that with some students this year. If you took them as an exception last year to be in the adult high school program, you'll have to take that dropout this year if they did not maintain continuous enrollment. Next, the last bullet says designating adult high school students as W2T is optional. You do not have to do this. You can go ahead and report any of these adult high school students as just regular dropouts if you don't want to go through the process of tracking the students. And then finally, the W2T designations. Keep in mind, since we're reporting 2017-18 dropouts, that these designations must be on 2017-18 records, not the 2018-19 records, in order to affect the dropout data for this year. Okay, and this is just a brief overview. There's lots of instructions. We have a document called Community College Adult High School Program. And you see the PDF, there's a link for the PDF, and then the location of it on the NCSIS site. And that's got all the detailed instructions for exactly the how-tos of entering these codes. And then there's also a Q&A document located in the dropout manual. And that dropout manual is important too, just in case you didn't know where that was. That has all the rules for dropout reporting and who's a dropout and who's not, and all the special cases. But in Appendix 2 there's also a Q&A document about some questions about this reporting of adult high school students. And now we'll take any other questions you have.
Yes, so we had a couple more questions that came in. We have a student on the potential dropout match report who was picked up in another LEA program school with an entry code of N1. How do we handle that?
I think I would call the school because I don't know what an N1 is. Do you know what N1 is?
N1, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's in any case like that. Remember, the bottom line is that we need to make sure that the student is, we follow the rules for dropout, and the rules, the student would not be a dropout if he's enrolled in another school on the 20th day. So you would probably need to get in touch with that school anyway.
N1's a program school. Thank you, Beth.
Okay, N1's a program school. I'm not sure what a program school is exactly. So you would want to make sure that's a genuine public school. Maybe it could be a special school of some kind. I'm not sure. But you want to get in touch with that school, make sure the student's enrolled, and then if you have any other questions about whether or not that's a legitimate enrollment, you can call me.
Let's see. Let me scroll back up for 1 minute. All right. So I have documentation about where a completer went. What do I do with it? Who wants to see it? Very
good question. At this point, Nobody that I know of will come to see it, but you never know who might want to see it at some point. So you'll want to keep records in a secured location to be able to justify your decisions made if any kind of audit is done on dropout data. At one time, I was tasked with putting together an audit protocol to go through. Now, that never happened. Hasn't happened yet, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. Things are kind of lean here at DPI right now, but you never know. At some point, people could do some audits. One way to do audits without going to see everybody is just do a spot audit. You know, it's like the IRS. So it's possible that you could be questioned on it at some point. The important thing is that you're documenting it in case somebody in authority wants to see it at a later time to justify your decisions made in reporting this data.
Okay. I just had a couple of people say, you know, program schools are like CCAS and migrant schools. There is an enrollment in a program, not exactly brick and mortar. That's what program schools is defined as. But Kimberly, we may need to do some more research on your N1 question. Let's see. So I got a couple more questions that came in. So on the potential dropout list, I know where the students are and have it documented in the withdrawal comments. Is there something else we have to do, or will the name always appear on that list? So I know where the students are and I have it documented with the withdrawal comments. This is on the potential dropout.
Oh.
Is there something else we have to do, or will the name always appear on that list?
No, the student will always appear on that list. And so, yes, keep in mind those candidate reports, you don't have to do things to eliminate students from the candidate reports, because remember, there are going to be exceptions on those reports that you're not going to report as dropouts. They're going to contain students that don't have to be reported. But that's an excellent, that was a good, that kind of answered the previous question. That comment box is a good place to put information about students that you find out, you discover things about them and you want to document it.
So at the beginning of the webinar, you had mentioned a non-public education site. Do you know if it'll allow them to locate a student? Is it like a search database? Yes,
I believe you can notify, you can locate the student, either the student or the parent. I'm not sure how it goes by. You know, you may have to call them. Yeah.
All right. If we know students plan to enroll, and I'm not sure if this is a Ken question, if we know students plan to enroll or have moved to areas affected by the hurricane, but have not officially been enrolled by November 2nd, how do we proceed? How do we proceed? Any exceptions for students not enrolled before November 2nd? I think that we're going to have to take that one back, Angela, for my manager, Justin Connor, to answer, because I haven't heard anything come through with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there could be some, here we are in terms of our, I know that Pender County starts school Wednesdays, hopefully.
Yeah.
If they start Wednesday, they will have missed 20 days, 20 school days. So their 20th day would be maybe the 20th, 22nd of this month, something like that. Well, so actually, in that case, even if Pender gets back in school, the students, you know, the 20th day is still going to be the 20th day.
Yeah.
For the purpose of the dropout, that won't change. So, you know, question, maybe be some question about are any kind of exceptions made because of family issues and stuff like that. But in terms of just the regular rules for dropout reporting, it looks like that we will have our 20th day at all our school systems by the time that you have to report.
So Carrie from Pender is on right now. She said yesterday was their 20th day.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Is there a way to remove completers that failed to return from the list if we know they have valid exceptions like moving out of state, we've received proof of being homeschooled, etc. She's just trying to get a clean report.
Okay. All right.
Is there any way to remove?
Yeah. No. Don't try to worry about getting a clean report. These reports do not need to be clean. These are candidate reports, and these are reports meant to say, hey, check out these students and see whether or not they're dropouts. So you're making the notations on there and saying where the student is what you should do. And you could do that in the system, in that comment box. That would be a good way to document it, or if you wanted to print these reports and write on them and file them, would be another way to denote that. Yeah, and that way you're kind of cleaning up your report and you're documenting those students that that don't need to be reported.
All right, I think I think we've caught up. I did refer some people to ask questions through either to Justin, or maybe it was kind of a longer issue to email, reach out to you.
Okay.
Ken, if you have any further questions, if you'll go ahead and send those out or send those through the webinar, I am going to show them. I did have some questions about where this recording will live when we post it. Usually takes a few days for us to get it posted on our NCSys site. But I'm going to go ahead and show you, for those of you that do not know where those live. So if you'll just give me 1 minute, there's my questions. All right, so everybody should be able to still see my screen. I'm going to go to the NCSys website to show you where this will live. All right, and let me put that in the chat also, the website. So in your chat, I am putting the link to the SIS website. This is where we house our training resources and also our calendar. Under PowerSchool, you will find the documentation here under PowerSchool Documents. All right. Also for training, for the training calendar, if you'll just click on training calendar. And I know there is another Dropout webinar coming up, and it was not listed. I think it is on the 16th.
Yes,
on our calendar.
1:30.
I need to put that one on this calendar and ask Yolanda to help me with that. But I know that also Ken sent out an email to everyone that's on that list that there will be another webinar. It is just like this one. It's the same content, and also we'll post the recording. But here is our calendar for, I know Ken's got a lot of webinars coming up for us. So if you'll go on this website, the calendar, and sign up for those, there's some in October and November. And then as far as the recording posting, it will be under training, and it will be under recorded refreshers. And there you'll see a list with the dates created of those webinars. So it will be posted. If you'll just give us a few days to get this recording up on the website, it will live there as well. Okay. All right. So let me check to see, and on your screen, I do have Ken's email address. I'm going to check our questions one last time. I don't have any more questions coming in, so I think we're okay. If you have any questions, please reach out. And if you have any technical issues, you can also submit a ticket to our home-based support center if there's any technical issues going on with these reports. So if that is all, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar, and I'll get that posted give us a few days and get that posted on the website, and hopefully we'll see you again at another webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.